Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hammer the Over podcast. It's been a while, but we're finally back here with a great week of college basketball ahead of us. This is March, and this week is the start of the majority of the Power 5 conference tournaments, and I'm here with Ethan French, my partner in crime. French, how you been after our long break here?
I'm doing good. It feels good to be back. I know we've kind of been messing around with those little daily picks, but it's nice to sit down and have a real conversation. And, it's March, baby. Let's ride.
Yep, and in today's show, we are going to be previewing all the Power 5 conference tournaments, and we're basically going to go over our picks and just kind of break down some of the games. I'm more of a Big East, Big Ten guy, so I'm probably going to give more insight on those matchups. And then next week, we're going to be giving you guys our full NCAA bracket breakdown once the bracket comes out on Selection Sunday. We'll probably make that podcast either the Monday or Tuesday after and try to get it to you before the games start Thursday, because this year the tournament is set up a little differently than normal. So typically you'll have your play-in games that are Tuesday and Wednesday, but all those play-in games we played on Thursday, and the round of 64 will take place on Friday and Saturday. The round of 32 will be Monday and Sunday, and same for the Elite Eight. The Elite Eight this year, normally it takes place on a Saturday and Sunday, but this year it is on a Monday and Tuesday. So the format is a little weird because of COVID, and all the teams will be playing in Indianapolis, Indiana. And the other big thing is that if a team were to get COVID, they're forced to forfeit their match. So that we could see some crazy upsets there if a higher seed were to get COVID-19, allowing some of these lower-ranked teams to push forward in the tournament. But I'm hoping that that doesn't happen, just because I feel like that could cause some controversy in the entirety of the NCAA tournament if a team were to get COVID, because they're all in the same area and almost like in their own bubble. So hopefully that doesn't happen. So let's get started here. We'll start off with the Big Ten bracket. So Luka Garza, we all know his name. He was just announced the Big Ten Player of the Year. So he will be doing it for the Hawkeyes. They're at number 3 right now. So looking at the slate of games starting Wednesday, so we're filming this on Tuesday. This will be Wednesday, March 10th, the start of the Big Ten bracket. We got Minnesota versus Northwestern at 6:30, and then Nebraska and Penn State will be 25 minutes after that game. So we'll start off with those two matches. So Minnesota and Northwestern, both teams who had an interesting start to the season. Minnesota was on a point of where they were really hot, and Marcus Carr was just doing everything for them. He was hitting clutch shots, and they had some solid upsets. And same for Northwestern. Northwestern had some solid wins, and they were actually ranked near the beginning of the season. So, but now they're at a low point right now. Minnesota's big. I forget what his name is, but he is currently hurt right now, and they were struggling. Pretty sure they are on like a 7 or 6 game losing streak now. So it's been a bad end of the season for the Golden Gophers. So, French, how you feeling about that matchup?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to predict. Minnesota has had a crazy up and down season. They were ranked there for a while. They have wins they split with Michigan. They split with Iowa. So they have some of these top caliber wins. They've beaten Ohio State too. But, then looking at their last 7, like you said, it's bad loss to Indiana, bad loss to Maryland, bad loss to Illinois, 8-point loss to Northwestern, and the list just keeps going on. If I had to really pick sides, I'd probably rock with Northwestern on this one, just given Minnesota's current streak. But who knows? A team like Minnesota, I know they're seeded pretty low here, but should they make the right run in this conference tournament, I think you got to perhaps consider them for a tournament spot. But that's asking a lot of them. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm also leaning towards Northwestern in this matchup. Looking at their last 3 games, they beat Minnesota by 8 already, and that was on the road at Minnesota. And they just played Maryland twice and beat Maryland 2 times in a row. Maryland's a solid team. They're on the brink of making the tournament. So I think Northwestern, they're a decent team. They've been overlooked. They went on that huge losing streak in the middle of the season. They lost like 10 straight. It was really bad. But they do have big wins over Michigan State and Ohio State. Michigan State at that time was ranked 4th, but they were a little overvalued. So that win seemed to be better than what it truly was. But I think this game is going to be very close, probably 1 to 2 possession game in the end. But I think Northwestern's going to pull it out just because I think they have more experience on their team. They have a lot of seniority on that roster. And then going to the bottom of the bracket is Nebraska and Penn State. I think we can all lead Penn State on this one just because Nebraska has some players. Teddy Allen is a walking bucket. That man has multiple games of 20-point performances this season, and I'm pretty sure he had like 40 against Penn State last time they played. I would check the box score here, but and then this Penn State team, they're playing with a lot of energy right now. They're coming off a 2-game winning streak. They just beat Minnesota and just beat Maryland after they went down big to Maryland. And the first time they played Nebraska, they lost by 1 in the Bryce Jordan Center. They shot horribly from the field, 29% from the three. And I'm looking at the box score now, and the next game Penn State played Nebraska, thankfully the Nittany Lions came out and beat them, and they won another close game by 3 points. So both these times they've played have been closer matchups, and this is a game where Teddy Allen, he had 41 points, so he is just unreal. So I think the Nittany Lions are going to come out and they're going to change their defensive approach and focus on Teddy Allen. They have some other ballers as well as Delano Banton and McGowan, so the transfer from Pitt. So like they have, like I was saying, Nebraska has a solid roster from the beginning of the season. They're just like transfers from all over the place. Their entire starting five is composed of transfers. So that's why like it kind of took them for a little bit to get things underway. But that's why I was saying this year, like don't sleep in Nebraska because they do have the possibility of making an upset. But I think Penn State's going to take this one away.
I tend to agree with that one. I think Penn State was kind of in a tough season or a tough spot this season. They had led the nation in the strength of schedule, and they made it out of that schedule 10-13. Looking through their schedule, they really do not have many bad wins. They lost or bad losses. They lost to Illinois by 17. Illinois is a top 5 team in the nation.
Oh, yeah.
They lost to Illinois again by 14. Ohio State by 10, and Purdue by 21. But outside of that, they're competing with these teams, 2-point game against Michigan State, 6 against Iowa, 4 against Ohio State. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a hard team to gauge. I don't like them on the road a ton, but they always seem to compete. So I love them against Nebraska, and I'm not going to lie, I kind of like them against Wisconsin, looking forward in the second round. I think Penn State's a team that can really disrupt this bracket.
So yeah, we got Michigan State and Maryland now. This is Thursday. I'm gonna lean Michigan State in this one. Michigan State, I feel like, has the veteran presence. Tom Izzo's a coaching legend. He's gonna have them ready. And I've honestly not been a fan of this Maryland team. Their record looks really good, but I don't think that really shows who they are. They're solid defensively. I personally haven't really watched Maryland much this year. I watched their game against Penn State, and they have some players, but Michigan State, Aaron Henry is finally playing great. He struggled midway through the season, had a lot of turnovers, getting frustrated, you could tell. And that's when Michigan State went on that little slump after being ranked 4th in the nation. But they just beat Michigan by 6 at home. Michigan ranked 2nd in the nation. That was kind of a bounce back win, kind of a statement game for them after getting blown out at Michigan. So, and then if they win that game, I think they're looking. You don't really want to look at the next game, but they're going to get another shot at Michigan. And Michigan is without Eli Brooks. I believe he got injured. I think it was an ankle injury in that game. So we'll see how that plays a factor in that matchup. What about you, French? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm also leaning Michigan State. With that being said, Maryland has won 5 of their last 7, although it's kind of a weird stretch. They won 5 straight, then dropped their last 2 to end the season. I'm leaning Michigan State mainly because the 2 reasons you talked about. Aaron Henry's finally playing good basketball, and Tom Izzo is one hell of a coach. There's really nothing else to say about it. I think he's going to have those guys ready for March, knowing that, that's another team that could potentially make a tournament push.
Next up, we'll have if we both agree if it's going to be Northwestern, we have Northwestern against Ohio State. No hesitation, I'm taking Ohio State right away. They dropped a little bit just because the Big Ten is crazy difficult. They've lost 4 in a row to Michigan, Michigan State, Iowa, and Illinois, who are all great teams. So it was a tough stretch, and that's why they're at the 5 spot in the Big Ten. But I think they still have a chance of making a statement in this tournament, and they have the roster to make March Madness. They've one of the or make the Final Four March Madness. They have one of the best offenses in the nation. EJ Liddell is playing crazy right now. He just made the Big Ten first team, and I think the only thing they're missing to make the Final Four is size and like rim protection. They're not that big. They have Kyle Young, who's a solid body, and he's able to throw people around in there, but he's not that big, like in terms of height. But they can definitely run you up and score a lot of points. So, and that was shown against Michigan. That game was just a complete shootout. So that was an entertaining game. But I think Ohio State can beat anyone just because they have so many people who can put the ball in the bucket.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ohio State's a pretty clear pick for this one. I'm not as high on Ohio State as what you are. Um, I feel like a lot of these teams are kind of inconsistent. Like if you look at their schedule, they have wins at Wisconsin, at Iowa, um, at Rutgers, but then they lose to teams like Northwestern. They got killed by Minnesota, and they've dropped their last four. Now, I mean, all their last four opponents are all great teams, but you got to figure if Ohio State's that elite of a team, they should have at least gotten one of those games. So I wouldn't be surprised if they moved on after this to beat Purdue, but I don't think they're quite good enough to compete with the Big Ten elites being Illinois, Iowa, and Michigan. And moving on to Indiana and Rutgers. Um, I'm like weirdly partial to Rutgers just because I think they're kind of an underrated team, but I feel like Indiana's the same way. They got two guys in Jackson Davis and Race Thompson.
Race Thompson, yeah.
Both those guys are good players, so I think it should be a really good game. But if I had to lean, I'm rocking with Rutgers.
Yeah, I'm also taking Rutgers. I love this Indiana Hoosiers team, and the only reason I'm reading with Rutgers is just because I feel like Indiana doesn't have the offensive firepower. It seems they rely too much on Trace Jackson Davis to score for them. They do have some decent guards in Armin Franklin, but I think Armin Franklin did not play in their last game of the season, so I'm curious to see what his injury status is. But this Rutgers team, they had a stretch of solid wins, in the beginning of the season. They were ranked at one point. They beat Illinois at home. That was a huge win. They beat Purdue at home. And then they kind of went on a 5-game losing streak there when they were dealing with some injuries. Geo Baker came back, and then Cliff Amoriari was dealing with an injury as well. But I really like what Miles Johnson has been doing off the bench, and he's now in the starting position at center. And their guards have been playing solid too. Ron Harper has been struggling a little bit, but he's making some noise in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I love what's his name? Their other guard, Jacob Young. He is underrated in my opinion. He's crazy athletic. He can get around his defenders whenever he needs him to. I love what Steve Peichel is doing with his team, and they're a veteran group. Geo Baker's a veteran player who can make tough shots. That's why I like this team, and I think they can potentially make it. Like, look who they're going to be able to play. Illinois next, so that's going to be a tough game, but I think Rutgers can possibly make some noise, and they're going to have that confidence in that game against Illinois because they beat them earlier this season.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rutgers is a team that could make some noise in the Big Ten tournament. Uh, Rutgers did beat Indiana by 11 just 2 weeks ago. However, both these teams have kind of been on a little dry stretch. Rutgers has dropped 4 of their last 7, while Indiana has 1-6 in their last 7. So something to look out for.
To the bottom of the bracket, we got Penn State and Wisconsin. If we both agree with Penn State, it's moving on. So Penn State, they traded with Wisconsin midway through the season. This Badgers team has been interesting nonetheless. They have a starting 5 who all played last year for this team. So they have the experience. They won the Big Ten last year. It's just been an off season for them. It seems like they don't have that guy. And they don't really have a guy who's like that they can rely on at the end of the game. It seems to be Trice right now, but he fouled out actually in their last game against Iowa. So that's probably one of the reasons why they were unable to pull that win off. They were winning at one point, and it was a really close game. They lost by 4. So that was kind of promising, but it's also notable to say that Joe Wieskamp was injured and did not play in the second half. So nonetheless, like Wisconsin played them great, and there was sparks. There was like a lot of sparks of energy from both sides. But Micah Potter came off the bench and had 23 points, and he did start throughout the beginning of the season, but Tyler Wall took his position. But I think Potter's a great player. I personally feel like he should start in this roster. But I don't know. This game's kind of tricky for me just because the Penn State team has a lot of energy right now, and I'm obviously going to be biased towards Penn State just because I go there. But I'm going to have to take Wisconsin in this game. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Penn State gives them a close game. But I'm going to go with Wisconsin in the veteran leadership there.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that statement. Wisconsin is a good team. They are 1-5 in their last six. However, that being said, their last three games, all losses, by five to Illinois, four to Purdue, and another four to Iowa. So they're competing with these teams. I think at the end of the day, they will just be a little too much for that Penn State team. However, I would not be surprised if that was a really well contested game. So then, looking forward, we're getting a little hypothetical here. We're looking at these top four teams in the Big Ten: Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, and Purdue. Out of those four, who do you think's taking it home?
I think it's personally I'm leaning Illinois right now. They're playing great basketball, and they are even getting wins without Desumu in the lineup, and that's even crazy to think. Corbello is one of the best freshmen in the Big Ten right now. He's really crafty. He can get the ball to anyone on the court that he wants to. He's a great driver and disher. I was just amazed about some of the passes he was making down in the paint to Kofi Coburn. But I feel like Illinois is just rolling. They beat Michigan by 20. That's ridiculous. And just like their energy and enthusiasm, I think it's going to carry them to the Big Ten. They're looking to make a statement. After like last year, they were unable to. I feel like they would have made a run in March Madness last year if they had the chance, but obviously COVID happened. But I'm leaning Illinois just because I feel like they have the complete roster, and I love what Brad Underwood's doing there too. He's building a culture there, and he's going to continue to build upon that culture. They have freshman Adam Miller too, and Corbella as well. They're going to be a bright future for this Illinois team once Coburn and Desumu go to the NBA draft. Looking other than Illinois, I'm probably leaning towards like that Illinois Iowa matchup is going to be a great game. I think the winner of that semifinal game is going to win it all. Just because like I don't like Michigan right now. They're kind of in a slump. They did beat Michigan State, but then they lost Michigan State, and with Eli Brooks hurt, that's going to be a little concerning towards me. I love their defense. I don't feel like they have the offensive presence to keep up with Illinois and Iowa. And then the Ohio State Purdue game, I feel like Ohio State might come out with Purdue. But Purdue has been playing really good right now. They're a sleeper. We got to look out for them in March Madness.
Yeah, I agree with Illinois, 100%. I kind of tend to agree that the winner of that matchup between Illinois and Iowa, should both those teams advance, I think that will be the winner of the Big Ten championship. I like Illinois over Iowa because I think they match up well. Iowa's strength obviously relies down low in Garza. They have a lot of great guard play, but Garza really is the heart and soul of that team. And I think Illinois has the guy, Coburn, to match up with him. So,
The only thing that concerns me with Iowa is that Fran McCaffrey is not really a defensive-minded coach, and we've seen instances where their defenses have just struggled this season, and they kind of rely on their offense to outplay the other team's offense. And I don't think they can do that against Illinois, just because I think honestly Illinois' offense can perform better than like when Iowa's not shooting the ball well, because Illinois can do it all, and I feel like they're a more athletic team compared to Iowa, so they're gonna be able to run it up and down with them.
yeah, I also think Illinois is hitting, hitting their stride at the right time. They are, what is this? They're 11-1 in their last 12. Um, so yeah, I think that says a lot. They're coming together. Picked up some big wins. Three straight ranked opponents. Beat Ohio State, smoked Michigan, and beat Wisconsin. So I'm rocking with Illinois to win the Big Ten.
So we'll move on to the Big East here. We kind of talked about the Big Ten for a while there. We'll try to keep things quicker here with the other conferences, just because like the Big Ten's my and the Big East are my favorite conferences to talk about.
So give me your winner and a few sleepers coming out of the Big East.
So my winner of the Big East is UConn. I'm high on UConn right now. James Bouknight is a beast. I believe they're 12-2 this season with Bouknight in the roster. They're 4-4 without Bouknight in the roster. Nonetheless, they're still getting wins against solid teams, whether he's playing or not. But watching him play, he's just unreal. In my opinion, I feel like he's going to be a lottery pick. The most impressive game I watched with him this season was against Creighton, where he had 40 points and they still lost. So when he's just going to be unstoppable for any team to guard. He's going to get 20 points in probably every Big East game he plays. And if he's not doing that, they have other factors too in Tyrese Martin, R.J. Cole. We both love Tyler Polley, comes off the bench. Um, there's another guy that came off the bench the other day for you. Kind of forget what his name is. I'm blanking on right now, but they have the bench depth. Their defense is the best defense in the Big East right now. They're holding teams to right around like 70 under 70 points a game. And looking at their like bracket right now, they're taking the winner of Providence and DePaul. DePaul sucks. DePaul's not winning that game. Providence has players, but they have
They never quite seem to bring it together.
I don't know. Providence, they have solid energy. They're physical. Just it seems they're reliant too much on David Duke, and if David Duke doesn't play well, they aren't gonna win. Whereas like UConn, if Bouknight doesn't play well, they still have players who can step up. Just because their defense is good and they have other guys who can score. And then Creighton right now, I'm not big on Creighton just because of the controversy in the locker room with Coach Greg McDermott and his whole little, I don't even know what the comment was, his little racist comment he made. But I feel like the energy might be high, but they're not gonna have Greg McDermott. He's an elite coach, and with that being said, I think that they won't have the right focus because it just seems like they're not in the right mindset right now. So I could be wrong, but I just think this UConn team's going to be seeking revenge too after losing to Creighton earlier in the season. So that's my take on them. I honestly think Xavier might come out of that win and give Creighton a really good game. They actually just beat Creighton like a week or two ago, and they also are without Nate Johnson, their senior guard. So that's a little concerning for Xavier because Nate Johnson averaged like 11 points per game. He was a great role player. It was another piece of offense alongside Fremantle and Scruggs. But if Xavier beat Creighton without Johnson, then they're gonna have that confidence. Butler's a weird team. They've been doing a lot of injuries and COVID-19 issues all season. Same for Xavier. Xavier's on like a 3-week break. I feel like that a lot of Big East teams have been dealing with COVID-19 issues, but that Xavier Creighton game is going to be interesting. The top of the bracket, I don't know. I think it's open the top because Villanova's without Gillespie and Justin Moore. They're two starting guards, and it's going to be very hard to predict what's going to happen up there just because of that. I know that J Red's going to have him ready, and I was liking what I was seeing from Chris Archidiakono, who came off the bench, played the entire second half, even though he didn't score. He was a great role player, and he necessarily doesn't have to do the scoring. He just got to get the ball to his other players, and if he can facilitate the offense the way that Gillespie did, I think they should be fine. That St. John Seton Hall matchup, I think the winner of that might make it to the semifinal. So I'm going to rock with that. I'm taking Seton Hall. Even though Seton Hall's been struggling recently, they lost to St. John's. They just play them. They understand what they need to do to come out. And Sandra Mambos Kalashvili and their tall guy Oki Abagu are both beasts. And Seton Hall has great guard play. They just haven't been playing to their maximum ability. And I feel like there's some possible energy that can come out from losing to St. John's. St. John's is also without freshman Posh Alexander, who is on the all Big East defensive team, and he's leading the Big East in steals. And without him, I feel like St. John's defensive presence isn't as strong as has been this season. They held Villanova to 57 points one game. That just goes to show how solid their defense is. But I'm rocking with the Pirates, man. They've been solid in the Big East tournament in the past. They've upset Villanova before, and it seems like when Big East tournament comes around, the Pirates are there to make a run. So, I'm going for a long shot here. I'm taking Seton Hall to beat St. John's and then to upset Villanova in that semifinals, and I'm taking UConn over Seton Hall in the Big East tournament championship.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at this bracket pretty similar to you, and I mean, we do talk a lot about college basketball amongst us, so I feel like we have pretty similar viewpoints. I also like UConn to win the bracket. I love Book Knight, and they do have a lot of contributors. Uh, but going back to Book Knight, he is just he is a pure scorer. It is so hard to slow him down. And I really think he's the best player in this tournament. Um, so I do. I would say Providence could potentially make some noise, but once again, I like UConn so much that kind of shuts that down. Excuse me. Um, looking at the top of the bracket, Villanova's in a tough place, obviously, with injuries to Gillespie and the other guard whose name I forget. Um, but Jay Wright is such a great coach. It's really hard to overlook him. Villanova always plays such fundamental basketball, and they really do not make many mistakes. So I think, you know, whoever wins that Georgetown Marquette game, I think they're losing to Villanova. However, that being said, Villanova's going to have a tough second round matchup. St. John's and Seton Hall should be a really interesting game, especially because looking at Bubble Watch here, Bubble Watch. Seton Hall's projected one of the first four teams out, and St. John's is the next four out. So I think those two teams, have a lot to prove. It's kind of tough because really only one of them has that chance to make it. This isn't a situation where we can be like, oh, well, maybe St. John's and Seton Hall will both play well and make it. That's out of it. So I truly think should whoever win that game go on to beat Villanova, I think they could be looking at a tournament bid. That being said, I personally like St. John's over Seton Hall. I feel like that game can go either way. I know you were talking about Seton Hall just playing well in the tournament. I feel like that's partially, in recent memory, been to Powell, Miles Powell. He was an absolute bucket. And while Sandro, I'm not even gonna try and pronounce his last name, he's a nice player. He's not that dude that could erupt for, 30, 40 points. Like we had seen, Miles Powell's had so many great performances in the tournaments, just clutch performances. Um, but then also going back, Seton Hall's dropped their last four. They were in a pretty good spot there, and then they just fell apart, losing to Georgetown, losing to Butler, losing to UConn, and losing to St. John's. And I know we were keeping pretty close eye on that St. John's game, but Seton Hall started that game 16-0. They were up 16-0, and they lost by 10. And I think that's just kind of discouraging to me. So I'm rocking St. John's to beat Seton Hall. And I also think that the winner of that game will beat banged up Nova team. So I'm looking at like a St. John's UConn Big East final, and I'm rolling with the Huskies. The Huskies are back.
And before we move on, I just want to say that Marquette team's also a team to look out for. They've been playing well recently too, and I love what Coach Wojnarowski is doing with them. So I feel like Marquette could even give Villanova some noise in that game too, just because Marquette has a lot of solid players.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think whoever wins that matchup could give Nova a run for their money. But I just go back to Jay Wright, has those guys always playing fundamental basketball. They don't make mistakes down the stretch, and I think that's what wins. That's what wins tournament games. Whoever makes less mistakes, and Villanova does a great job at not making mistakes.
So I got the ACC bracket pulled up now, and I'm just gonna go quickly with these following brackets. Probably keep them around like five maximum 10 minutes per bracket. But like I haven't really been following the ACC that much this year just because it's been down. But for me, if I had to pick a winner, I'm going with the Seminoles and Florida State, even though they just sold that game to Notre Dame. Their athleticism is out of this world. Scotty Barnes is a crazy guy. He's a 6'9" point guard. He's just sensational to watch. He had 17 points in that game, I think it was. And looking at their side of the bracket, it doesn't look that competitive for them. They're gonna get the winner of probably gonna be Duke Louisville. Louisville's been a weird team this year, but I don't even think Virginia Tech's that great of a team. So I think Florida State will have no chance or no problem getting to the championship. A team that I'm looking to make some noise is Georgia Tech. They've had some really great games this season. And I'm just not buying into this Virginia team. It's just the ACC has been a weird all around season. Like, you got Duke playing in the first round, and you got North Carolina, who had a strong finish to the season, but both Duke, the only way they're making the tournament is probably if they make a run and win the championship of the ACC, but I don't really see that happening. And I really was impressed with this Florida State team all season. Like I said, they did lose that game in Notre Dame. At home, they've been unreal. I don't think they've lost a home game in like 2 years now. But even though this is like, they're obviously not going to be home for this game, but still, I like what the Seminoles have been doing. And I think they have the offensive firepower. And they're just like a great all around team. So I'm taking them to win the ACC.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good pick. Um, I think it really does come down to um, Virginia and Florida State. I'm not super high on Virginia Tech either, especially they've had five of their last seven either postponed or canceled. At this point, what's the difference? But yeah, I think you touched on it. It's been a really weird year for the ACC. Usually the ACC is the conference that's in there stacking, 8, 9 teams in the tournament. But this year is just such a different picture. Duke, obviously, for one, has been an incredibly inconsistent team. And North Carolina's had its fair share of struggles too. So it's kind of tough. Um, I think a team that could make some noise is Clemson. Clemson's played some quiet basketball this season, but they've played some very good basketball. So that's my take on the ACC. I like Florida State, similar to you. Um, Watch out for that Clemson team though. Clemson is also on quite a stretch here. They've only one loss in their last 7 games, so great way to end the season.
All right, next up we got the Big 12, and looking at their bracket now, this is one of the best conferences in the nation, arguably. They have solid teams all around. Baylor obviously probably gonna be a 1 seed in the tournament. But looking at the first round, you got TCU and Kansas State, and Oklahoma versus Iowa State, and then West Virginia and Oklahoma State playing against each other. That's gonna be a solid game. Oklahoma State just beat West Virginia without Cade Cunningham.
In West Virginia too, I believe.
Yeah, so that's a solid win for Oklahoma State, and we'll see how Cade is doing, but he should be good to go, I believe, for this tournament and for the March Madness. But looking at the other games, yeah, Baylor at 1, Kansas is the 2nd seed, just because Kansas has been decent, and they beat Baylor. Baylor's only loss this season is to Kansas. Um, and then Texas and Texas Tech going at it on Thursday. But I'm taking Baylor to win this entire tournament. They're 21-1. Like, come on, they're in the one of the best conferences in the nation and only getting one loss. I'm not surprised, honestly, that they didn't lose more. But people are like, oh, Baylor's questionable now because they lost that game. But like, come on, you expect them to be perfect every single night during this season. They just beat Texas Tech by 15. Masio Teague had 35 points, and Jared Butler's a contender for the Wooden Award. Davion Mitchell's a great role player. I love Mark Vital's defense. Man got 15 rebounds. Dude does it all. He's a blue-collar guy for the team. But I think Baylor's going to come out with this tournament, and I think they're like a lock for the Final Four in March Madness.
Baylor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's not very often that we say the Big 12 could very well be the deepest. It probably easily is actually the deepest conference this year out of, well, yeah, and NCAA. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like I'm scrolling through Billis, Jay Billis ranked the best 68 teams, and we're looking at Texas is 14, Oklahoma's 15, Texas Tech is 16, and you know those teams are going to be the sixth, seventh, and third teams ranking in the Big 12 tournament bracket. Similar to Austin, I think Baylor's the team to beat. They've been the team to beat all year. Um, A few of these teams I don't really believe in. Like, is Kansas legit? They're 12-6 in the Big 12, but I don't know. They've had their moments. They ended the season well, but I'm not sold. They had three straight losses there at one point in the season. Um, another team I'm not necessarily sold on is West Virginia. Um, West Virginia's had a few games at home that I personally think they should have won that they didn't. Like, they lost to Florida, who Florida's not a bad team, but at home they should be beating that Florida team. There really is no excuses to lose to Oklahoma State without Cade Cunningham. So it's an interesting dynamic there. West Virginia's also playing Oklahoma State in that first round Big 12 matchup, which should be an electric game again. Um, but going back to the conference standings, I think Baylor's a team to beat. I think Oklahoma State could make a lot of noise. And I also like Texas, so I don't know how the two sides look, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a Baylor Oklahoma State Big 12 championship with Baylor coming out on top. But similar to Austin, I think Baylor. I wouldn't call them a lock for Final Four because anything can happen in March, but they certainly should make it very far into the tournament this year. So
Yeah, for sure. And then our final bracket is the SEC of the Power Five conferences. Um, for me, gotta go Roll Tide with Alabama. I've been really impressed with this team this year. They push the court, extremely long and athletic, play defense, but at the same time, their offense is able to run you up big time just because they push the four so well. Nate Oates has been great this season coaching them, but I feel like they can defend at all the spots, And looking at their schedule, they have a lot of solid wins, and they're ranked, I believe, like what, sixth in the. I forgot. I don't know exactly what they're
yeah,
ranked right now.
actually, where are we at? Alabama has the fifth strength of record in the nation. So they are, the SEC isn't that great, but they, they still rack up a lot of really quality wins.
And looking at their losses, they're all against solid teams. They lost to Stanford. That game was kind of a fluke in my opinion because Stanford's kind of a bad team now. They lost to Stanford by 20. That was at the beginning of the season. They also lost to Western Kentucky. Shout out to them. Western Kentucky's going to be a sleeper in March Madness. They got a great team. And then they lost to Oklahoma. We know they're good. Missouri's another sleeper team in this SEC who's kind of fallen off the board here at the end of the season. And then also they lost to Arkansas, and we all know Arkansas has been playing great team basketball recently, and they've been on a stretch of solid wins. I think they're on like a 8-game winning streak right now, so don't count them out as well. Their losses coming to Alabama earlier in the season, LSU, Oklahoma State, Missouri, and Tennessee, so all solid losses nonetheless. But I think just Bama is too good, and I think that they're going to continue to roll into to the playoffs and possibly make a case of. I don't think they're going to be a 1 seed, but let's see how they play in this tournament, and we'll see how the Big Ten tournament plays out. But I think they're going to be a 2 seed in March Madness.
Alabama? Yeah, I would agree with that. I also really like Alabama. Alabama's been one of those teams we kind of rode this season a lot, betting wise. So yeah, SEC's is another conference in a weird position. Like Alabama certainly is one of the better teams in the nation. I don't think they quite get the respect they deserve, but usually in the SEC, it's Kentucky's always putting a team out on the floor that's top five in the nation, but that just really wasn't the case this year. Um, Missouri started off looking well and then just kind of fell apart. I don't really believe in Tennessee either. I even have my questions with Arkansas. This back half of the season they've played well. I mean, they played well in the front half, but I don't know. I guess I didn't really give them the respect they deserved until coming down the stretch. Moses Moody for him is a great player. Um, but I think Alabama's coming out on top. I think we're going to be looking at like an Alabama LSU conference championship, and I say LSU because um, Cam Thomas can score the basketball. He is he is one of those dudes that he's just a bucket, and I think it's sometimes that's what it takes in these conference tournaments. You need that player, and I don't. I like Moses Moody a lot, like I just said, but I like Cam Thomas more. So I'm looking at Bama LSU. I think Bama's going to take this home. They are going to be something like a 2 seed in the conference tournament in the bracket. Um, should they win the SEC? I think they're in the conversation for a 1 seed too, depending how a lot of these other conference tournaments play out.
That's what I was thinking. I think Gonzaga and Baylor are most likely going to be. Gonzaga is playing in their conference title tonight against BYU. They're like 13-point favorites, so I think they're going to pull that one out for sure. I mean, it's Gonzaga.
Yeah, no, I agree. Gonzaga is, if you ask me, far and away the best team in the nation. And, I usually like to hate on Gonzaga because they don't ever really play anyone, but this year they played those teams and man, they just steamrolled everyone. I remember watching that Iowa game. It was only like an 11-point game, but I don't think Iowa, when it mattered, never had the game within 10 points. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, so that pretty much wraps up all of the Power 5 conferences in today's podcast. We're going to wrap things up here. And as always, we love your feedback and we love making these podcasts for you guys. It's been a little long pause just because of college and stuff. But we're going to get this out to you guys and we're going to get the other one to you guys once the bracket comes out. Big week ahead of us. This week's going to be entertaining. I love conference tournaments. And then obviously March Madness is right around the corner. Selection Sunday is 5 days away from when we're recording this. But as always, thank you guys for listening in. This is the Hammer the Over podcast. Join alongside Ethan French. I'm Austin Groft, and we'll see you guys next time here on Hammer the Over.